Hi everyone, it's Vince here, and I'm putting out this video as a tutorial for my custom suite of indicators. And this video is being long overdue, and I'm going to walk through how I use each of my 4 custom indicators and how I apply it with structure in the chart. And that's the main point of using indicators, is you always want to have supporting structure of the chart and not rely on any indicator solely by itself, because oversold can always become more oversold, and same with overbought. So with that out of the way, I want to start with the first indicator, which is a new one I just created, and it's called VinceGaps. Now, before I show that to you, believe it or not, this is the gap indicator that is standard with TradingView, and I just don't know what to make of it, because it's showing a bunch of boxes in the past, which doesn't help us today. It's completely missing some open gaps that are obvious, and so the need was to create a custom indicator to address this. And not only that, but up until recently, I was actually manually drawing all the gaps in a chart, and it was taking up a lot of my time. So I created a custom indicator that instantly detects all open gaps. And gaps are important because they can often act as support or resistance for a stock when a gap is filled. So here's the Vince gap indicator, and we just simply turn it on, and it immediately detects the open gaps, and it tells you what the fill level is. Now I've got purple here as highlighting the fact that these are bearish gaps. These are created from gap downs, and green is a bullish gap. It was created from a gap up. But right away, you're going to know exactly where the gaps are. And if we go into the details here, and this is actually a request I had from one of my ex-subscribers who asked if they could have coordinates for the gaps. And so I've built that into the tool here too, with this coordinates box. And if you press that, it'll actually tell you precisely which level the gap starts at and which level the gap fully fills at. You can also change the font on here and make it bigger if you want, or if you're on the app on your mobile, like I am, sometimes it's better to have a small font. As far as other items that you can customize, you can actually remove the boxes completely and just have the levels, or vice versa. You can remove the levels and just have the open gaps for your chart. You can also position the labels a little bit differently. So if you want them further back, you can just change this from 60, say, to back here, and it just helps you format your chart exactly the way you want. So quite simply, that's it. And you can actually go back as well too. I've got the look back, looking at 125 candles back, but if you want to, you can actually go back quite far. I can change it to 500 look back candles, and you will actually have all of the open gaps in Tesla's history. And that's important to note too, that not all gaps get filled. So there's a misconception out there that every gap needs to get filled, and that's just not the case, really, for any stock. But just to keep things clean, I'll just change the look back to the default 125 days. And you can use this on any time frame. And sometimes there's small gaps on smaller time frames that don't show up on the daily chart. Weekly gaps are important to track too, so they don't always show up on the on different time frames as well too. And of course, like all the indicators, you can use this on any ticker. So we could pull up Apple, for example, and immediately the gaps are shown with precision and clarity. So that's the first indicator, Vince gaps. So now let's look at the next indicator, which is my RSI V indicator. And what this indicator is designed to do is to help you visually see what the relative strength index, RSI, is doing, other than being supportive visually. It's otherwise exactly the same as the standard relative strength indicator. And what I like it for is you can just quickly see at a glance how the relative strength is doing, and you can see when there's a shift in momentum. So for example, in the all-time highs, December 2025, we were trending with RSI between 50 and 70. That's the white color. But then we fell below 50. And in general terms, daily relative strength index below 50 tends to be bearish, and above 50 tends to be bullish. And so we did see a shift there from white candles to red, and that actually persisted quite a while. And we're just now starting to shift back to white candles where RSI has reclaimed 50. So it makes it very easy visually to spot the trend. And like I said before, we always want to ensure that structure in the chart, the price structure, supports the indicators and not just rely on the indicators alone. And so a good example of that was back last year when we had the trend going sideways. The candles were flipping back between above 50, below 50, but not really trending strongly to the extremes. And at that time, we had a consolidation pattern forming with a symmetrical triangle. And when that finally broke out, we saw that the RSI candles actually went yellow. That means that relative strength index is starting to get overheated above 70. And actually it did turn purple here, which is over 80. And that's getting to more of the extreme side. But with the support of price structure, we saw that we actually hit the second target of the symmetrical triangle breakout. And that's where we can see RSI getting overheated, the second target for the Fibonacci level being hit. And so that was a great time to trim because we have price supporting the overheated status, telling us that it might be not such a good risk to reward at that moment. On the weekly chart, you can zoom out and you can see times where Tesla was overheated, turned out to be a good time to sell. Here's where the candles turn blue. That means weekly RSI is under 30. It's a pretty rare occurrence, but if you ended up buying at that point, that was a generational buying opportunity. As far as the customization goes, you can change the colors of the candles if you'd like. And you can also you click this box here, color candles. And what that will do is it'll just give you your regular green and red candles. But you can still see the legend below to see how RSI is trending. And as I mentioned before, it's the same RSI as a regular indicator where you can see the same divergences that show up in RSI, like the all-time high that we had where price made a new high from October to December. But at that same time, RSI did not make a higher high. And that was a warning signal for bearish divergence, with it, which then led to the current downtrend that we are in. Okay, so the next indicator we'll take a look at. I'll show you VinceCount9 indicator. So what this indicator is based on it's based on the concepts from the DeMark sequence, which is quite widely known. And essentially it's showing you exhaustion levels when a 9-count prints. And I've got the 2-day chart up here, and for some reason Tesla really likes the Vince count on the 2-day time frame. It's actually done quite a good job of nailing the tops. So we have one here, here, back here as well too. So it's actually been very consistent. It's not flawless though. On the downside, it didn't do quite as good job identifying those exhaustion points. But essentially what this indicator does is it can be used again on any time frame, and it's to identify exhaustion levels for the stock when it's running too hot or too cold. Now, recently we've been in a downtrend, but the indicator has been doing pretty good. You know, this was a local top. So was this one, pretty near the top here. This was a miss, but on the bottoms, pretty good success there as well too. But I'm going to mention it again. We always want price structure to support the signal from the indicator. And on this 2-hour time frame, you know, we just had on Friday an inverse head and shoulders pattern play out nicely, where we had the left shoulder, the head, right shoulder, like that. And we can draw the Fibonacci on there as well too. Oops. Right. Get rid of that. Bring it down to the neckline here. Yeah, so we can see that price from a structure standpoint did hit the target, the first target for the inverse head and shoulders on Friday. And with the Vince count, you can actually see more than just the 9 count. You can actually see the full count here. And these numbers are quite small, but they're actually quite small on purpose because I didn't want to clutter up the chart with a bunch of numbers. But it basically shows you by clicking the box, see full count, you can see where the exact count is for the 9 count. And we're actually at an 8 count on the bullish side. So if we do end up going up on Monday and printing a new 9 count, that could be a potential exhaustion, especially in conjunction with the structure that played out and already hit our bullish target for the inverse head and shoulders. So that's something to watch for. Now, the way the counts work is they actually do a look back of 4 candles ago. So right now we have an 8 count bullish on the 2-hour. And what that means is if you look 4 candles previously, so 1, 2, 3, 4, it's measuring against this 4th candle. And as long as the close was higher, the bullish count continues. But if it's lower than 4 candles back, then it would actually switch the momentum to a bearish count, and it would start at 1 and go all the way to 9. Now, a true exhaustion signal would actually have a 9 count, whether it's bullish or bearish, or it could also have an 8 count. So an 8 or 9 count, if it makes a new low on the bearish side or a new high in the sequence on the bullish side, that's a stronger signal than if it just makes 9 count without making a new low. So for this candle here, for example, it did not make a new low because we can see this wick is lower. So that wasn't as strong a signal as if it was making a new low. But the way I like to use it is I typically check in once in a while to see where the count's at, but it's more for signaling when an actual 9 count prints. And if structure is doing something important at that time, that's when I pay attention. Okay, so we've gone through 3 indicators. And lastly, I want to show you the new and improved Vincelator indicator. And I've just made some changes on this recently. So let's take a look here, zooming out to a 2-week chart as a good example. And in general, the Vincelator is an oscillator that's designed to tell you when things are getting overheated or oversold. And we can see that when the all-time high was made back last December, that's when the Vincelator got near the top of its band. It happened before. And a lot of times when you get that Vincelator near the top of its band, it's time to pay attention to a possible correction. And of course, always keeping structure first and foremost. Now we can see on the 2-week Vincelator that the oscillator hasn't crossed bullish yet. And there's some questioning whether the low is in here or not. And now I made some enhancements to the Vincelator. And one of the enhancements I made is I added a leading indicator. So when you go into the style settings, you'll see a box here that says lines. If you click that, it'll actually pop up with a dotted white line, which is my leading indicator tool that I've added. And it's quite helpful because it gives you a bit of insight ahead of time on where the main Vincelator green and red lines might be going next. And we can see here that we did actually, on the leading indicator basis, reach below the bottom of the band. And so that can be supportive with the idea that we did reach a low already for 2026. And we can see in the past, when we made a low last year, at the end of March 2025, that was the low. And that was actually precisely when that leading indicator also hit the bottom of the band. Whereas the main green and red Vincelator lines didn't actually cross bullish until afterwards. So sometimes the regular Vincelator lines do nail the bottom, but sometimes it takes the leading indicator to do the job. And this can be used on any time frame as well too. You can look at it, for example, on a 15-minute time frame, which is actually good for day trading, as long as structure supports it. And right now, we actually reached that target that I mentioned earlier on the inverse head and shoulders on Friday. Tomorrow's Monday. We did sell off towards the end of the day on Friday and had some red candles on the 15-minute basis. The leading indicator is actually getting really close to the bottom here with the Vincelator lines not far behind. So what I'll be looking for on Monday is to see where we gap, if it's going to be a gap up, gap open, and if price can make a strong move once we cross back bullish. The other thing about this indicator is I do have these new bands up here. I got red trending bands and green trending bands on top, red trending bands on the bottom. And what that means is it's a form of overbought and oversold indicator. So when we get a green band, it means that the stock made a new recent high. And if we continue that trend of making new highs, those bands will continue to print. And when we make new lows, we get the red band. Now, on the red band side, the last one before the most recent one we made was actually down here. That was a new low. So we got that red band printing for that particular candle. Now, we are starting to get a red band. We did get a red band actually on the last candle of the day on Friday. Now, this is actually something that you can view as bullish because we are quite substantially higher in price than when the last red band printed. So the bands are saying that we are getting exhausted to the downside, yet the price is much higher than when that last indicator printed. So to me, that's a bullish signal for the short term. I'm going to wrap it up here and invite you to ask any questions further. And I hope you enjoyed this video. This indicator suite is available for X subscribers exclusively. And it does have a small add-on as well too. To get access, you would just go to my X profile and there's a website that I use on there. You click that and it takes you to my website, and it's just this button here for TradingView indicators. Once you go through the checkout, just give me a DM on X and I'll set you up right away. Thanks everyone for watching. Take care.